comments on. It's up to you. That you can see. They come in from all the platforms. Uh,
I'm fine.
yeah,
Whatever.
yeah. Some people it's a distraction, and I totally get that. Let's see, is this thing working? I'm gonna tag you on Facebook. That way, let's see here. Yeah, E. Yeah, there you are. Yeah, I just tagged you.
All right.
Bar-ché, Dorje, Dorje or Dorje,
Dorje.
Dorje,
Back to Dorje.
Bar-ché, Dorje. Yeah, that sounds almost like um Portuguese, like a Portuguese.
It's a Tibetan name.
What's that?
It's a Tibetan name.
Tibetan. Bar-ché, Dorje.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I noticed that on your page. First of all, it's going to take probably another minute. There's 17 people in the house. They're filling up. But yeah, that was the. First of all, let me just thank you formally for
Mhm.
coming on and sharing space with us and honoring us with
Yes.
your presence. I feel a vibration with this show. I'm not sure why, but I just tell it like it is.
Hmm.
I did go to your page. I noticed, and I can't remember like details. I can only remember energy, but I do remember, and I guess like a Tibetan or a Buddhist, Eastern type of vibration, almost like of old, like the secret fraternities, like the adepts, the yogis and the shakurs, and so I picked that up for me, which is great because I've been asking people, I've been mentioning it on the shows. I'd love to get somebody on here and talk about Hinduism, or the type of stuff that you're into and that you're representing. But so first of all, yeah, I just want to say thanks. This is not a normal, typical interview or Q&A. It's a conversation. It's a conscious conversation and spontaneity, integrity, intuition, creativity, imagination, and courage, depending on what we're talking about. So, yeah, just a big welcome, and I'm really happy to meet you, brother. And yeah, a big thank you.
Well, it's wonderful to see you too.
Yeah. And you're welcome to ask questions too. Like I said, it's just a conversation. So
Yeah.
I love to ask people when they come on the show. I don't know if you've ever seen an episode, but I don't do it every time. But when I don't know somebody, I like to find out: have you always been this weird, or did you have a wake up experience?
I was weird from the beginning. When I was very young, I thought I would die when I was 9, and I was totally okay with it. So that was really strange. Then around 14, 15, I started getting into martial arts, and then very quickly into the spiritual side. So I started going to Indonesia, where I practice also the kebatinan, ilmu kebatinan.
Mm.
It's a medical site where you have magical stuff. Like you put your hands in boiling oil.
You put your
And
hands in boiling oil.
yeah, for example,
Wow,
the chop with machetes on your arm, they don't go in. I don't do that anymore. But when I was young, I was very excited about those powers and to investigate those. So I did that for quite a while. But
that
then they
sounds yeah, that sounds very interesting, very intriguing. At a young age too, you jumped into that.
well, I started going to Indonesia when I was like 18, 19. So I didn't go in that young age. I mean, it grew on me. But yeah, then I went a few times. I went there, so that was very exciting. But then I also found out that having all those power doesn't always naturally make you a nicer person. Some
Mm.
people actually get quite a big head and a big ego and think they're better than others.
Yeah,
And so then I started searching around, and then different teachers, different um, how you call it, where they give a week and things. And yeah, somehow Buddhism was most appealing to me because there's no blind belief. It's kind of these are the things that you can receive, and those are the practices so you can have an experience yourself. Because I really like the metaphor. For example, I can conceptually try to explain how a Finnish sausage taste. But then, no matter how I describe it, if you don't experience it, you're not going to really know what that means.
right.
So then the message, of course, you need to buy the sausage, bite in it, and then you have the knowledge. And so, and I think my awakening came very slow. So I'm still a Buddhist teacher. I have personal students. But then the interesting thing is I started to look more and more to different channels, and I saw a lot of comparison, or a lot of how you call it, similar views within Buddhism. And then I went to one channeler, Wietke Koloff. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her.
Mm-mm.
She's from Holland, and then she introduced me to a channeler that wanted to work with me. And so then I started to also um, start communicating with people that were not Buddhist and more of a New Age, new paradigm kind of views. And so I'm trying to merge that, and I also start channeling this now because I have now somehow more confidence in that.
Right, right. Wow, there's a lot to unpack here. No, there's a tremendous amount, and I'm very inquisitive. I have just a curious mind. But so, just for clarification, just a couple of things. Just looking at your chronology, you mentioned New Age, and
Yes.
I think New Age was probably something that was more, I guess, prevalent in terms of like more of a unique definition in the '90s. And I think that, like, as 2012 came, you started hearing light workers and star seeds and, light language and channeling and downloads, transmissions, and all that. So, was it that far back when you started going into like alternate things beyond the traditional Buddhist, and you started to look for, and when you met
Oh,
this channeler? Huh?
only for a few years now.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, just a few years. Okay. Because a lot of this activity has happened since on or about 2012. So that makes sense. And in turn, and just for clarification, because there are a lot of different connotations for some of the buzzwords that we have in these communities, and one would be channeling. So I just would like to understand where you're coming from when you talk about having met a channeler, working with a channeler, and then you channeling yourself. What does that mean to you? What is that? Who are you channeling? How do you feel about that, especially coming from the Buddhist perspective?
Well, in Tibetan Buddhism, they always had channels. They call them oracles.
Yes.
So the Dalai Lama has a few people around him that go in a trance, and he talks with interdimensional beings. So it's not strange.
Right.
Um, but what happened? It's more. I was curious about certain experiences, and I wanted to have a perspective that was not human somehow. Although most of them are still humanoid. So I started to go in that, and then I went to this lady. And I also asked those questions: do I have any connections and things? And then somehow there was a lady or a group, and she comes with a group, like we all have our own guides. And she is from the Yael race, which is a hybrid race. I mean, there's different hybrid races, and they one of the last ones. And now I let her just come through for people who have questions and have an interest in that. So then I go in some kind of a trancy state
Mm-hmm.
where somehow our vibrations they accommodate each other, and then somehow I translate for her whatever questions are being.
Okay. So we've done, I think, a little over 3,300 episodes over the years, and we've had we're open to all things. I mean,
Yeah.
that's obvious that anyone that's dipped their toes into the waters of what we call awakening or enlightenment or growing up,
Mm.
you have to be open, And but so on this platform, we've had many channelers. I mean, I channel. I think everybody channels. I mean, I think it's
Mhm.
just a different. It just depends on the context, but I think we're certainly speaking for more than our human entity many times, and probably have been for all our lives.
Yes.
So I'm not taking anything away from channeling. In fact, I find it to be all one and the same. You know, a transmission, a download, a channeling. To me, they're all kind of the same. But that's not the gospel. That's just my take on it. Now, what I wanted to get into was some people, such like what you're describing, reminds me like similar to people that have been on the show and like Bashar. That it's not that they channel only one entity or energy complex, but that's typically what they're doing, or at least that's what it looks like from the human perspective. My question to you is, what is your relationship with this particular entity or energy complex? Do you feel like at some level that it is in close proximity to you? And I mean, what I mean by that is, I know we're all one, and people talk about monads, and they talk about soul tribes and soul family and teams. Do you feel like that this is a higher aspect of you, or do you feel like it's me and you here, and it's separate from, not separate, but you know, it's further away from you than say something very close or kindred?
What I feel, well, informations I've received is that we have some parallel life in a Syrian collective. I'm not sure what that means.
Mm-hmm.
It has been told to me. Um, I feel that we all interconnected in many different ways, but that we are all unique expressions. And sometimes we express ourselves singular, and sometimes there's a team,
Right.
depending on subject and who you're communicating with. What I understand from this lady, she has a team also, depending on the questions. Calls in specialist, or however you want to call that. But somehow I tap into her field the easiest. I mean, I had sometimes when I channeled, and suddenly an Syrian collective or a Dromedar collective came in, but I'm not really sure what that means. It feels different. It's more difficult for me to then get the words out, so to speak.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I think she is a unique energy that I'm strong connected with, in the same way that human beings can be connected, but a human being can also be connected very strongly with a dog. It's a different kind of communication, but I mean, you can still be very. Um, I mean, that communication can be very profound in many ways, even on a telepathic manner. So that's just another being, and I believe dogs also have their own team with them also. So I think we all do that. And then we might also make agreements on a higher plane, for example, a higher self or an oversoul, or however you want to call that. And what exactly is, I don't know. It's just I go in this trance state, and I already learned to go in trance state with this kabatina. So there, where they do that boiling oil, you kind of call all that teachers in, that then
Right.
somehow that protection. So I was already used to going into that state, but that was always more physical.
Right.
So I asked for physical movement and then those things. But now somehow I allow that being or beings to come through me if people have questions, and then they can just get information from that perspective.
Cool.
But to
Very.
be honest, it might just be me. It
Yeah.
might be my higher self. It's hard to pinpoint, and also totally leave it open. I just
Yes.
the name was agreed in combination with another channel. They don't seem to have a name because they have their own energetic signature
Right.
that in those world they recognize from each other.
Right.
Um,
No,
yeah,
I think your answer's fantastic because it's for me. It's the in the not knowing. You know where, you know, whatever we pull in or whatever we're looking at, it just feels right to me. It feels resonant to me when there's always an open end to it. You know, the
yeah.
I
I
don't
also
know. The I don't know is a powerful thing. Uh, but I totally get what you're saying, and I can really I align with it because because the mystery's still there. You know, that great holy darkness is still there. I wanted to ask you, like, in terms, and I just want to back up to Buddhism for a second, because, and then go back into this channeling. I just had a couple of questions. You know, years ago, the Dalai Lama said that, and I know you've got your own energy. Buddhism is a part of it, and I totally get that. I think that's a great, a great. I say we remix what we've been given. You know, the templates that we were given, we expand on them through our experience. To your point, we only learn through the experience. But years ago, the Dalai Lama said that the world would awaken by the strength and the power and the actions of the Western woman. Okay, and so not to be
Yes.
specific to the Western woman, but to take this back to the feminine in general. There's been a lot of
Hmm.
discussion over the last 10 years about the anchoring of the Mother Goddess energy, the Divine Feminine, how it's expanded. We understand that this is an energetic description of the overall picture of polarity, masculine and feminine, but it also shows up in our, uh, in our physical vessels. One of the things I've been looking for over the years is where, and I know as human beings we want evidence, so there's always that unknown again. But as within, without, as we change things in the energetic field, we know that they physically manifest in the world or in our lives. So I look for true signs, real signs that the feminine energy, which we can see in a patriarchal system that has been imbalanced, that would only make sense that the one that's been suppressed would come up to where we hit an equilibrium. So I look for signs of where that might be happening, in my own little circle, but also on the world stage. One of the things that I've always been intrigued by is that every single religion is a patriarchal religion, and I would have to include the Buddhist. And and
Yes.
the and I would just like to ask you, and there's no right or wrong. I just want to learn um, what in your experience and your knowledge of Buddhism, to specifically Tibetan Buddhism, is there any dialogue within that organization or that energy complex of Buddhism where they talk about bringing the feminine? And I understand that they do have links such as Kuan Yin and so on. But is there any dialogue? Is there any movement within that organization, to your knowledge, where they're promoting the feminine energy both externally and within themselves?
Um, yeah, some lineages do that very much. I'm part of a female lineage. Um, Yasa Sogyo. She was a female Buddha from in the 8th century.
Mm,
Um, and of course, there's also people in power that want to keep it that way. I think you have both. Um, but our natural state is within man and women, and actually, we are all feminine and masculine at the same time. We just need to find that non-duality within our expression. So, yeah, we had a male domination, and with Tibetan Buddhism, that has not been different. Even when the Buddha came, the Buddha Sakyamuni, the real Buddha in India, that came into being, I mean, he couldn't teach women.
hmm,
Because the thing is, if in that Brahmin culture, if a woman would step in a holy ground, then the whole ground would be defiled because they're bleeding. And so he needed to teach within that society. Well, in the first 30 years, he
right.
couldn't accept any women. And then, of course, later he introduced that more and more. And I think in every religion that has been happening in Tibet, there are stories that women who are getting too much power, or they had to flee their area, because there were bad things starting to happen if they became very similar to like a witch hunt in the West.
Right.
Um, but I think now there's more and more discussions. Of masculine distortion of wanting to overpower. Because the moment you overpower, you actually lose it, and whatever you overpower stops sparkling and radiating naturally.
Yes.
And I think more and more. The thing is with Tibetan Buddhism, there's different termas. Termas is a body of teachings that come down, that fits the generation and the collective consciousness of that time, so it never becomes a dogma. And now we start seeing that more and more female termas, our stomach start coming out, where there is less symbolism, it's more direct, it's more intuitive, it's more within the sense fields, instead of just different methods of where everybody has to do the same thing. So I think there is change, but then not everyone likes to change, and like in every religion, you're going to see that in Buddhism too.
Yeah. I love that. I love that openness too, where because we all have different perspectives, and like I live in the deep South, and it's a very Southern Baptist, Western religious ideology and cultural ideology, and so I understand that. But it's nice to hear somebody who knows a relevant amount about Buddhism, that that shows me that really in every quadrant, the patriarchal, let's just say, has affected everything. But I also like the way that you explain this too, because it sounds like, and which really kind of makes sense to me, that it's a constant refinement in these madras, or what would you call those that come out, Thomas, or whatever you were saying, Thomas, yeah, that come out, or to me are an expression of that, because it sounds like these things occur through the individual and their own inspiration and relationship and connection with universal intelligence. So
Yes.
that's great to hear. I really appreciate you giving us that insight. So I can kind of bring all this kind of together: the channeling, the Tibetan Buddhism.
Mm.
I studied through my personal reading for about 25 years, as much as I could, every religion, every philosophy, and so on and so on. So I'm a little bit familiar with a little bit of everything, but I'm not like a master of anything. So I just take the life experience, the work that I do, and now we're talking channeling, Eastern, ancient Eastern religion, Buddhism. We're talking openness and the connectivity that's occurring on the earth that goes along with the awakening, to include our channels of communication with, let's just say, the non-physical. Okay.
Mhm.
A big part of that for me and for many others isn't always in the galactic. It's in the elemental, it's in the nature beings, it's in the angelics and other divine essences and universal essences yet to be determined. But the inner earth seems to be something that more and more people are talking about. And what I'm referring to is not clickbait videos on YouTube, but real substance coming through the personal inspiration and personal experiences, dimensional experiences, dreams, and so on that people are having. As we put the pieces together, in the past, the future, and the present all kind of merge.
Yes.
What is your understanding, or what do you know in regard to what's occurring on this earth and the relationship or correlation that may or may not be there in your mind with the inner earth, places like Shambhala and so on, that we have much information on that really hasn't been mainstream. Do you have anything that you could add to that or could share with us?
Well, I think in every place is occupied by many different dimensions, and mostly we can't perceive each other till people start practicing, become more open, and then different dimensions start bleeding through, and information can bleed through in the different dimensions. I also think whatever we do in this world has an effect on all the other different dimensions in the world. There's all
Yes.
kind of beings, and then culturally, people then just depict that differently. in their cultural understanding. I mean, even within human understanding, we still kind of perceive things within our human apparatus. I mean, we can never smell what a dog smells, but it doesn't mean we can't communicate so the dog can smell for us to find something. And I think that interconnectedness, I think that becomes more and more open. If it's now from the cosmos or the inner earth, different dimensions, what dimensions. I mean, in Tibetan Buddhism, that has always been described. There's whole lineages that starts communicating with different beings in an area before they even start building a monastery.
Right.
For example, there's a community because you're invading someone else's space,
Right.
and I think more and more people start waking up that that actually exists. And the moment you're open for the possibility, then it's also more likely that you might start seeing parts of those possibilities.
That's a great explanation and a great reminder, no matter where we go, to respect the space and the energy of where we go, even if it seems very inanimate. I mean, I speak to my car, I speak to my computer, but there are times that I need to remind myself, whether I go walk into a forest or walk into someone's house, everything is all made of the same substance.
Yes.
Everything is something that can be relatable. And I can speak from my own experience from what people might call the dark demonic to the light angelic. But yeah, that's a great reminder. I really appreciate your insight on that. In terms of uh, what seems to be occurring since on or about 2012, and I know a lot of people that have come on the show can go back to the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, and the 60s, where they were plugged in and discussing these topics and getting downloads of the topics that we discuss. But in terms of your perspective, what do you think is happening on the earth when people refer to this great awakening? How do you think we're doing? Or is it really just always the same thing as we go through our incarnations and through our lives each day?
Well, if we only just go throughout the different incarnations, I think we did that, but I think we start opening up. So we don't have to go around in circles over and over and over again. So I think we're in a very positive state. And most people would not agree, but I see many signs of people being more open, more things can be discussed. Of course, there are corners in the world where this is less, and actually, is those corners where people play up more, because even within Tibetan Buddhism, the oppressive regimes they're crumbling. All the secrets are starting to come out because also in Tibetan Buddhism you have scandals of teachers that become cult leaders and exploit people, in different ways. Um, and that has always been hidden, or you couldn't do it, it would be bad for religion. But now it just all comes out, and I think it's such a positive thing, because the thing is, then people really start checking a teacher.
Right.
A teacher is not without his own journey and faults and things. And if you give too much projection, he might get a big head and think he's more. And I think you need to be very sensitive for that. A teacher is not more than you. I mean, we're all born naked, we're all going to die, and we try to make the best of it. The only thing a teacher is going to do by his experience is reflecting something. He doesn't give you anything, he just reflects a certain state so that you can recognize that state within yourself.
Wow. Yes, it's true. Yeah, and there
It's
seems to be. I noticed.
beautiful.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's like when you go when you want to become a violin player and you want to become world famous. The teacher might push you, whatever. There's a natural devotion for that teacher, but I mean, that teacher can still on other areas be not so good or
True.
whatever. I really feel, and that's a direction I really start hanging into. I want to write some books about it also. Um, you don't have to unconditionally give yourself and then totally not trusting your own intuition. I think you should always trust your intuition and then ask the awkward questions. I think that's very important. And then if teachers then think that's inappropriate, you're just in the wrong space.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Anyway, that's
noticed,
my this
I
is my
noticed,
rant.
no, I love it. I love it. There's a little bit of a lag. I wasn't interrupting you. It's just it's a little, like probably 5 seconds. I thought you were through talking, but no, I'm glad you continued, because I noticed, in doing these shows, doing 15, 16, 17 shows a week, uh, consistently since, probably late 2015, early 2016. So
Mm.
there's been a lot of, I guess I would consider, based on the context of the conversation, any energy practitioner, what we might call
Mhm.
healer, um, almost, I would expand the label of teacher, just for the sake of the discussion. But
Yes.
what I've noticed, both through the words of those that I've had conversations with, and through just my sensitivity to the field in the work that I do, okay, what I'm
Hmm.
able to tap into, that around late 2019, there seemed to be a movement. I
Hmm.
saw through the words of the guests that came on, and also again through what I observed, I saw this movement from, I would describe it with no disrespect, a kind of a yogi guru teacher kind of
Hmm.
template, and it started to shift. And
Yes.
many of these practitioners, as we got into 2020, started saying, all these modalities that I had, I don't use them anymore. Or I'm seeing people come in and they're not like they were before. They're awakening up at all different levels. And it became more of a, I think, and I'm sure it was there, but it seemed to be in the minority. There was more of a energy of, let me open up and reflect. I like your word. Let me reflect myself and you from myself. Let me open this field and share with you what I know and what doors I've gone through, and then the rest is up to you. So, really, kind of a self empowerment kind of template or paradigm shift. Do you have anything you could add to that, or does that make any sense to you at all? Have you seen anything like that? Is this what you're
Yeah,
speaking of
very
writing
much.
these books on?
And I think this is actually what empowerment or transmission is. I mean, you create a space by your own radiation, and everybody has their own radiation,
Hmm.
right? And if people they come to you, so they're automatically already more perceptive, right? Otherwise, they would not come. But I don't want them to lose their own sovereignty. I actually want them to find their own sovereignty, and this is
Hmm.
extremely important. And so I tell my story, I teach, I give my view, and I give methods of practice. But I also say, well, those are methods that have worked, they might not work. You need to find your own way in
Hmm.
this. I want to empower you so you can find your own natural state, so you can become your own unique expression of reality, whatever that means for you, because we are all part of reality, and somehow this is what I want to empower people too, so they are on the path. They can use the methods being given, some old, some what newer, but they need to have their own journey. They need to find their own strength and sovereignty and find their own inner guidance and their own intrinsic wisdom, so they can express themselves naturally in the world. And that will be most beneficial when people speak from their own heart and not when they just become a copy of someone else because that's part of the doctrine.
Hmm. Yes. Yes, I'm right there with you. When you open yourself up and you channel,
Hmm.
brother, do you are there? And I think you mentioned this before. I just want to get some clarification. Through your channel and your connection, uh, information comes through, as if I understand correctly, but also you reach that information through questions and answers, or is it just through questions and answers?
Yeah, what I do is I enter in that state and I allow words just to come. So then I normally then questions are encouraged,
Okay.
and then whatever comes through, and I'm somehow in some kind of a, it's not full trance, but kind of a dream state,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yes.
Sometimes I see pictures. Yeah, it just feels different. So, and to be really honest, people tell me what it is. I'm not sure what it is, actually. As long as it benefits people and I can resonate with the information that comes out, then for me it's all good. Because actually, even when I normally teach, I already have a feeling, although then I'm totally conscious, channeling's happening all the time because,
Yes.
on a subject, those ascending masters that have a connection with that subject will also be there and communicate with or through you or however you want to see that.
Yes. Yes. Would you be open to, and there's no right or wrong, I'm just curious, would you be open to channeling today?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. So can I ask you, uh, before we head there, is there any is there any limitation on what questions can be asked?
I've,
And
I've
you're
No, because then that would be called restriction.
yeah, okay,
Right.
okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I think
As
we
close as you.
yeah, I think we'd be I know I can speak for the community, that we'd be deeply honored if you would share that with us, because I have a feeling that your energy is a bit, well, it is unique, as we all have our own unique soul signatures, but it feels a bit different than, and I'm not taking anything away from anyone else. I'm just saying your experience and wealth of experience, I think, lends to a uniqueness that may be something we haven't seen before in terms of channeling. So we would love for you to do that.
Yeah, you want to go in now?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
great.
I do some breathing so I get into that state.
Thank you.
We are extremely pleased to be of your service in this particular time, space, reality. How can we be of your service?
We would love to ask you some questions.
By all means, shoot.
Yes. And anyone in the audience, you're welcome to put questions up, and I'm going to just get it started. In the from the human perspective, in the complexity of what we're going through, awakening, expansion, transformation, there are many different energies, entities, and energy complexes that present themselves to us. Elemental, angelic, galactic, to name a few. Uh, are there specific roles for each one of these types of energies? Do they have certain purposes?
Yes, like we all have our own particular team that we want to explore in either physicality or non-physicality in this particular dimension called Earth or Gaia, or however you want to call it. Is then you have a point of attraction depending on your capacity and your interest that's in your energy field, and then physical and non-physical, we be there that whoever is attracted to your particular energy field. This is also how you make your friends, and one that you might not resonate that much with. Not that that's more or less. It's all within the team that you want to explore in this particular reality.
Hmm. My friend Elena Starbuck was wanted to ask, would you be kind enough to channel what are hybrids? That's a word that's used a lot. Could you give us some insight onto what you know about hybrids?
Well, we're all hybrids. It's just different DNAs and different strands are being mixed. For example, all your domesticated dogs are all hybrids. There's certain functions you want to do, and you'll mess around with it, so to say, and a new race is born. Well, same. There is a particular timeline where a humanoid race called humanity lost contact with their emotional body, and they had to cry out into the universe, and then different races came to assist within that. And then they came back from that future self, although there is no future, of course, but within your linear time experience, we will call it future, where the different processes in agreement with higher selves to bring certain emotional bodies back by the hybridization program.
Hmm. Yes. Thank you. There are many narratives out there, as we know. Narratives such as Anunnaki, DNA manipulation, lots of propaganda, lots of information, disinformation. Um, are all of these narratives simply distractions? Is there a singular timeline that involves elevating the earth and its children to a higher dimension or not?
Do you mean this particular timeline you are on?
Yes.
Yes, in every decision, you create a new timeline. Your holographic, finding the words, holographic perception keeps on changing. Know that everything is a holographic perception. And of course, within human race, many holographic perceptions have interweaving. But you decide by your choices, action, and your vibrational output in what direction you go at this particular moment in this particular timeline. This particular planet will give many access to many different expressions.
Hmm. Yes. Many people have spoken of a solar flash, a big event. Would you be able to share with us, is that a distraction or is that something that will actually occur?
Well, this is very depending where you are and what time you're expressing yourself. There are a few timelines where you might even experience a three full day or full darkness before a new shift can happen. This is not within every timeline. So we would not worry too much because already now you have that information. When it suddenly becomes dark, you don't have to panic.
Hmm. Yes. Most recently, there's been a number of people from platforms within these types of communities that have been speaking of uh, ancient arcs that are embedded in different places around the world that are rising as some type of frequency, uh, nodes of frequency or grid points that will assist the earth in expanding. Do you have any knowledge of this? Is there anything you could tell us about it?
Yes, there's many things within the earth that are not coming to the surface in this moment, but in the future, in most timelines, they will, as part of the ascension program of this particular earth, know that certain beings have a feeling of different probabilities. Know that even an object might have a consciousness, so you can put a whole download, for example, in a physical object, and then hide it in a particular place. Then you can place that particular knowledge into a consciousness stream within different parallel realities and incarnations. And then suddenly, 500 years later, for example, someone brings up and get this pull and those dreams and those visions they need to go to a place. And then suddenly they pick up that particular object, and suddenly the download
Mm.
is being created. Yes, this does exist in many different timelines on the earth, uh, placed there by beings. The interesting thing, of course, is that those particular objects are coming up in exactly the right time, connected with the collective consciousness of that particular time, space, and cultural reality.
Thank you. Another topic that seems to bring a level of polarity, even in opinion, within these communities is what role, if any, that our galactic brothers and sisters and family play. And usually let's just say the discussion or the point of contention revolves around whether they will physically present themselves in mass or whether the contact will continue to be on an individual basis. Do you have any information on that?
We think both will happen at the timeline and the probability where you, in this moment, find yourself. Know that the beings that will come into being will be of a most hybrid race that look very humanoid. And then, of course, this can only happen when the majority of the human consciousness have accepted it. At this moment, it's quite dense for those beings to come in this particular reality. Even the new children coming into this reality already find it very hard. This is the reason why so many young people feel they don't belong here and they want to go back even when they don't know what that exactly means. But this is all part of the ascension, because all those young beings, even when they don't feel they're in the right place, they do have to agree to come here. And so by just expressing themselves here, they bring already the field and the possibilities within the field of the human collectiveness in which they can tap in. This is the reason that within the next 20 years, things will open up even more, as we have seen in the last 20 years.
Yes. If you could share with us what an individual human soul could do in their own right that would most benefit our cause of growing and bringing a greater equilibrium and alignment to the earth and to the universe from the earth, what advice could you give us?
Be open as much as you can. Don't judge anyone. You can judge an action if that hurts someone else, but you don't judge the person because that person is just a little bit further away from their natural state and needs to find their own way back. If not within this lifetime, then in another lifetime. This is very important. The moment you judge, you separate from that person or from those group of people. And the moment you have separated, you're not in reality anymore. Know that we all consciousness stream. So the moment we walk in the street, we have an influence on that particular space in the same way that everyone else has an influence on you. That's why in the teachings that this particular channel has learned, the call that you don't exist doesn't know you're not here. It just means that your existence is always depending on the circumstances you find yourself in. For example, if you would be born at this moment in, for example, a war zone, a whole new aspect of you would come up. All those aspects are within you as the ground or potentiality. And then you express yourself depending on the circumstances and the belief systems you have created within the different circumstances. And this will then be your next logical step. So we would suggest that you find your intrinsic wisdom, whatever you hear, you take what you find attractive in that particular moment, but you don't solidify, because the next point of information might have more resonations, and then somehow you might allow that change to happen again. And what doesn't resonate with you doesn't mean this is wrong. It just doesn't resonate with your unique expression, the way you're going to express yourself within. So it's very important that many beings express themselves differently in a unique way. So you all become a unified field of cooperative components. In the same way, in your body, there's many different cells. If you break a bone, you put them back together, those cells find each other again. But a bone cell is different than an eye cell. A bone cell in an eye would be quite disruptive. And so we are also our unique expression of reality, but always changing depending on the circumstances we find ourselves. And the moment we find our natural state, our intrinsic wisdom in every situation, and allowing the compassion activity to spring from that intrinsic wisdom that we all possess, then you are in the most purest and unique expression to benefit all that is within the whole field for others to tap into if this is of their liking.
Yeah. I want to thank you for opening the channel and communicating with us. And if you have any concluding words, we're very open to receive them. But again, thank you. Endless gratitude, love, honor, and respect and reverence.
Yes, find your natural state. Don't be fear-based, don't judge. And we would suggest to trust your own unique expression, whatever that means, and don't be ruled by societal pressure of people that don't understand that everyone needs to have their own sovereignty of expressing themselves. And in this way, your ascension will go the fastest. All right. How was that for you?
Very good. I thought it was it's my style. Like we just get right to it, you know. And again, I'm not taking away anything from anyone else. I'm just saying I like to jump into things, and I like the way that the transition was made. Yeah, and I really appreciate you doing that, because I know it takes you know, a very centered, heart intention based alignment, and of course to keep your frequency, like you were talking about earlier. They can't come down here because it's too dense. So obviously, for you to reach that, you've got to. That's a lot of energy to reach.
Well, I think we both make an effort there. But I tell you, when I do it, that's why I can just keep on doing it. I feel so buzzing and good after. It's so great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It actually happened to me last night. My wife and I. She doesn't come on very much. She's a very powerful channel, and she's been instrumental in my life. But anyway, we decided to go on last night, and it just worked out that way. And so when we got ready to go on, and she hadn't been on in probably, I don't even know, 3 months or something, I was feeling horrible. I was just like, I can't even talk. And so we decided that, you know, I would go into my own version, I guess, which I don't do a lot publicly. And the same thing happened at the end of it. I came out of it, and I felt great. I felt like I was 18 years old, and I just was, you know, peaking in my puberty. Like my hormones were going crazy. But yeah, it's interesting as we dive into these parts of ourselves that have been suppressed and seen as taboo. There are so many endless, infinite mysteries and skills and abilities and higher sensitivities and dimensions and universes and such that we can reach. And I really appreciate you, what you've had to share today and your openness. And I really appreciate your balance and your down to earthedness. Because a lot of people, it's a lot, and I'm sure you've experienced this. You mentioned it earlier in regard to your journey. This kind of energy is very powerful, and it can be very challenging to our ego, which
Yeah.
which is not a bad thing. It's actually probably the catalyst for further expansion. But yeah, thank you very much, and I wish you the very best. All blessings to you.
A
And
question for you, is that okay?
yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay, because you might see energies. How does it seem to you? How did it feel? Because I'm quite new in this. This is actually the first time I did this.
You want, okay, you want my take on it.
Yeah.
I tend to simplify everything because it's the way I can
Yes.
understand.
Hmm.
So this is not for anyone else. This is a discussion between you and me, and we just happen to have a lot of brothers and sisters watching.
Yeah, that's fine.
I could see from my perspective, uh, talking with you for about 40 minutes and really absorbing your energy and emerging with your energy. And then to go into the channel, I could feel, uh, I still felt your presence
Yeah.
uh, in, I don't know how to say this. It was seamless. It was very seamless. The only thing that wasn't seamless was the voice, because
Mm.
obviously they're different frequencies or
Yes.
different tonalities. But
Hmm.
to me, I felt like what you represent in channeling, and this is a high compliment. This is not what you represent in channeling. You represent as you stand here, as you sit here now.
Yes.
That's what came through. Now I don't know if I would have been able to detect that 6 months or say a year ago, because I think we're all expanding. But right
Mm.
now, as my chakra column is lit up as I'm speaking, and my crown is tingling and exploding, and tones in my ears, I have to believe that that's confirmation from the universal that we are all part of. So to me, uh, they're one and the same. Uh, and it feels to me like what I've picked up with a lot of people and with myself over, especially over the last 2 years, where I'll see somebody, let's say a year ago, and then 6 months ago, and then today, and you can actually see the transformation, as I'm sure people see it in me because I come on every day. But it
Mm.
looks like, in a very powerful way, that you're blossoming again, is how I would
Yeah.
put it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I would love to get together with you again in 2022 if you're up for it, and
Absolutely.
dive deeper into a collaboration. And again, I wish you the very best always, and hope to see you again soon.
I think we will. All right. Have a
Excellent.
wonderful day because it's daytime at your place, no?
Yes,